Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of Cahokia, North America's forgotten ancient city. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. At its peak around 1100 AD, it was one of the largest cities on Earth. Its central platform mound was larger at the base than the Great Pyramid of Giza. It contained suburbs, plazas, markets, and a timber circle used to track the movements of the sun with astronomical precision. Its population reached between 10,000 and 20,000 people, larger than contemporary London. And then, within 2 centuries, it was completely abandoned. Its population vanished, its name forgotten so thoroughly that European colonists, who arrived centuries later, had no idea what they were walking among. Cahokia, located across the Mississippi River from modern St. Louis, is the largest pre-Columbian city north of Mexico. It was built by a people archaeologists call the Mississippian culture, and its existence challenges almost every assumption about Native American civilization before European contact. What happened to Cahokia? Why did its people leave? And why has this extraordinary achievement been so thoroughly erased from the American cultural memory? This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the broader phenomenon of lost civilizations, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. What separates a civilization from a collection of villages? Not technology alone, but organization. The capacity to coordinate thousands of people toward shared goals, to store and transmit knowledge across generations, to build institutions that outlast individuals. These are the hallmarks archaeologists look for when they define a civilization, and for most of the 20th century, the oldest examples they could identify dated to around 3500 BC in Mesopotamia and Egypt. But that benchmark has been steadily eroding. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, discovered in the 1990s and excavated since, consists of massive stone circles with elaborately carved pillars depicting animals, abstract symbols, and human figures. It dates to at least 10,000 BC, roughly 6,000 years before Stonehenge, and older than the invention of pottery or agriculture in the conventional sequence. Someone built it. Someone organized the quarrying, transport, and precise placement of limestone pillars weighing up to 20 tons. Someone knew what they were building and why. That level of coordinated effort implies a society more complex than any model of 10,000 BC predicted. Göbekli Tepe is not alone. Every few years, a new site expands the timeline further. Ancient stone structures in Indonesia have been dated to 25,000 years ago. Complex astronomical alignments have been found at sites in Africa predating Egypt by millennia. The human story is older, richer, and more turbulent than the standard narrative allows. When we look at lost civilizations, we are not chasing fantasy. We are attempting to recover chapters of a history far longer than any currently recognized textbook will tell. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter, the core evidence surrounding Cahokia, North America's forgotten ancient city is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Monk's Mound, the central earthwork at Cahokia, rises 30 meters above the floodplain and covers more ground area, approximately 6 hectares, than any Egyptian pyramid. It was built in stages over several centuries from an estimated 22 million cubic feet of earth, carried and placed by hand without metal tools or draft animals. On its summit stood a large wooden building roughly the size of a modern 2-story house. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered, at its height around 1050 to 1150 AD, Cahokia's population made it the largest urban center in North America, north of Mexico, surpassing any contemporary European city north of the Alps. Trade goods found at the site include copper from the Great Lakes region, shells from the Gulf of Mexico, and mica from the Appalachians, indicating a commercial network spanning more than 1,000 kilometers. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this. And that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine Woodhenge, a series of large timber circles constructed at Cahokia, was an astronomical calendar that tracked the solar year with precision. Post positions aligned with the sunrise on the equinoxes and solstices. Multiple phases of Woodhenge have been identified, suggesting continuous use and refinement of the astronomical system over generations. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, archaeological evidence indicates that Cahokia was planned, not organically grown. The major mounds are arranged according to a grid aligned to true north, and the central plaza covers approximately 50 acres of deliberately leveled ground. The planning and coordination required for such a project implies a sophisticated urban administration far beyond what textbook accounts of Mississippian culture typically describe. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of evidence of mass human sacrifice has been found at Cahokia, most notably at Mound 72, where a man of high status was buried on a blanket of 20,000 shell beads, accompanied by 4 men with their heads and hands removed, and nearby mass graves of women and young men showing evidence of ritual killing. This suggests a complex hierarchical political structure with a powerful elite capable of organizing large-scale ritual events. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. Cahokia appears to have been abruptly abandoned between 1200 and 1400 AD. Theories for the abandonment include environmental degradation, the massive deforestation required to build and heat the city, causing flooding and crop failure, political collapse, drought, and disease. No single explanation has been universally accepted. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain Cahokia, North America's forgotten ancient city. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that Cahokia collapsed primarily due to environmental overreach. The massive construction program required deforesting the surrounding landscape, which destabilized the floodplain, caused erosion and flooding of agricultural fields, and eventually made the city unsustainable. Sediment core studies from Horseshoe Lake near Cahokia show a dramatic increase in flood deposits coinciding with the city's decline, consistent with the environmental collapse model. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that political instability and elite conflict caused Cahokia to fragment. The evidence of human sacrifice suggests a coercive political system that may have generated resistance among subordinate populations. Archaeological evidence of palisade walls built during the late period suggests increasing defensiveness. The city may have been abandoned not because conditions became untenable, but because people chose to leave an oppressive urban hierarchy. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that a sustained regional drought in the 13th century, consistent with evidence from tree ring records across the central United States, undermined agricultural production that could not support the dense urban population. Mississippian communities dispersed to smaller settlements where subsistence farming was more reliable than centralized agricultural systems feeding a large city. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding Cahokia, North America's forgotten ancient city, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes sediment core analysis from Horseshoe Lake adjacent to Cahokia shows a dramatic spike in overbank flood deposits beginning around 1150 AD, corresponding to deforestation in the watershed. Physical evidence that the city's construction program triggered the environmental instability that might have caused its collapse. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented isotopic analysis of human remains from Cahokia shows that the city attracted migrants from considerable distances. Some individuals grew up in regions hundreds of kilometers away. Consistent with Cahokia's role as a regional pilot, icon and ceremonial center drawing populations from across the Midwest. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed copper repousse artifacts from Mound 72 depicting figures in elaborate ceremonial costume share iconographic elements with artifacts from sites across the Mississippian world, from Oklahoma to the Carolinas, confirming Cahokia as the center of a cultural and ideological sphere of influence. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding Cahokia, North America's forgotten ancient city. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. Cahokia Mounds State Historic Site is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, yet it receives a fraction of the visitors who travel to Egyptian or Maya ruins of comparable significance. The relative obscurity of Cahokia in American cultural consciousness reflects a broader pattern of neglect toward Native American history and achievement. The city built here was one of the great urban experiments of the medieval world. Its abandonment represents one of the great mysteries of North American prehistory, and its gradual recovery through modern archaeology is slowly returning to public awareness, a chapter of American history that was never supposed to have been forgotten. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of Cahokia, North America's forgotten ancient city, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Cahokia ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle, it is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.